Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried and Jensen. As proud sponsors of BeliefCast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Inspires BeliefCast. Thank you for tuning in week after week. You guys are fantastic. I can't thank you enough for the support and for how many people are listening to this. It just kind of blows my mind. But I just want you to know how much I appreciate this. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Siegfried and Jensen. Thank you so much for believing in me. Wasatch Recovery, Veracity Networks, and iHill Institute. You guys are just the best. You guys have really just put your belief into me and what we're doing here, and we're helping so many people because of you guys. So thank you for supporting this. And then just a thank you to everyone that tunes into this. Once again, you guys are fantastic. We have an amazing guest on today. He's not just an amazing person, but he's also a very good friend of mine, Dave Lindsay. Dave, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man.
I can't believe I'm on your podcast. This is amazing.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad that you are on it as well. I've always looked up to you, Dave. You know, not only are you good at what you do, but you're just a good example to me of the way you know, family man and, you know, a man of faith and things like that. I really always looked up to that. Basketball, maybe we'll debate, you know.
I'm not as good as you at basketball.
Yeah,
I do like to play, but I still I'm chasing you around on the court way too much.
I don't know about that. No, you're good, man. But it's good to have you on. And I've known Dave for years and years, and his family as well. And he's got a fantastic family, and just a good person in the community and what he does. And so, a little background on Dave. He was a graduate of the University of Utah and is the president of Avalanche Studios, a film and video production company based in Salt Lake City. He's produced and directed hundreds and hundreds of local, regional, and national television commercials, business-related media projects, and the list goes on. He's done several documentaries. He's one of the past winners of Utah Business Magazine's Top 40 Under 40, which, again, that is saying something, because that's not everyone can get that.
That was back when I was under 40.
Yeah. He's 43 now.
I'm a little I'm just barely over that.
Yeah. You've been honored by the Salt Lake Chamber as a chamber champion. I mean, I know you've done a lot of work in that area. I've been to some of your events in the past. He's married to his beautiful wife, Heidi, and they're the proud parents of 2 girls and 2 boys, and they live in Sandy. But more importantly, one of the things we want to talk about today is Dave's done an amazing project / documentary called Dog Valley. This is an important LGBTQ-themed film that took place back in the 1988. It's about the kidnapping and torture and rape and a murder of a gay college student, Gordon Church. And it was set in southern Utah, where this all happened. It was one of the most brutal hate crimes in the United States at the time, probably still to this day. And I like this documentary is fantastic. I got a chance to watch it. My wife's watched it because we know Dave. We got a little sneak preview of this, and I can't tell you, when I watched this, it was so well done. And I was telling you this off the air, like, I was just impressed. Not that everything you do is top notch, but man, I was really captivated by this documentary that you did.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. It's a hard story to hear about because just the brutality of the crime itself, but it is a fascinating story that has a lot of interest from a lot of people because it's a true crime documentary, but also it has a lot of crazy things that happen in the story, not just in the day of the crime, but also to the people who were convicted of the crime later. There's some crazy things happen to them in their lives. And there's just a lot of twists and turns and crazy stuff that happened around this whole event. And so it's a documentary about that. And when we first started making this documentary, I was a little worried about it, wondering what good is going to come out of us telling this story. And we did come into some interviews later in the process that kind of took care of that, where there's some beautiful moments in this film which really are touching and tender from surprising sources. And so even though the crime is horrible and it's a horrible thing that happened to Gordon Church, I think when you hear the reactions from some of the people who are involved in this case, and when you watch the documentary, you'll be surprised at how tender and how touching some moments are in this film.
Well, I'm excited to talk about this, and this is going to be the big part of our conversation, but I'd also like to have people who are listening to this that may not know you, get to know you a little bit, Dave, and kind of a little background on you. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, tell us about your family, and maybe some childhood things that you've learned and kind of grew through.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Salt Lake City, Utah. I went to Brighton High School, same high school as you, graduated just a little bit before you, but so I grew up, in fact, not far from Wasatch Recovery, from the site of this podcast. So my parents, my mom still lives in the house just down the street at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon.
Just right there,
Just like I could probably throw a rock from here and hit my parents' house.
Yeah.
And my mom's still there today. So I grew up right here. Loved growing up in Utah, right here at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon as a kid. Playing with all of our childhood friends. You probably know some of these guys, Russ George and Mike Nuttall, and I don't know, I should be throwing names out, but all the guys from Brighton High School back in the day, the guys Wally Davis grew up across the street from me.
We all love Wally.
Yeah, Wally, man, he was a class clown and everything.
Yes.
Great guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, just having fun, playing in the hills, going up the canyon, fishing, hiking, goofing around, playing lots of basketball, trying to figure life out as a kid. It was a great place to grow up. So.
Yeah, and I can relate with that because I grew up just a little further down the road from where you grew up, and it was just a good time in life. It seems like we were always outside. Maybe you don't see that so much today. It's kind of interesting, but it just seemed like we're always outside doing something fun.
Yeah. My parents didn't have a very tight leash on us, so they would just go outside and play, and so that meant okay, I'm going to go out, and I'd be out all day, and not once would my parents ever come out to ask where I was. And I remember having some friends who their parents would yell, "Hey, Bill Bob, come home!" I had a neighbor named Bill Bob, so I remember why are their parents yelling at them to come home? I don't have to go home. But yeah, so my parents just let us roam, and that was great. But I probably got in trouble a few times for doing a couple things that I probably shouldn't have. But generally, I was a pretty good kid.
Well, yeah, you're a good kid for sure. And I think people who know you, including myself, like you love to have fun. You love to kind of joke around at times too. And was that kind of how you were as a kid as well?
I was pretty shy as a kid, honestly. I think my family has a knack for being pretty funny and crazy within our house, so I don't think I'm the funniest one in my family, and I don't really think I'm that funny. But actually, I do think I'm pretty funny. But other people don't really think I'm that funny.
Yeah,
I laugh a lot more at my jokes, and my wife, when I met Heidi, my wife, she thought I was funny for about the first 3 months that we dated, just enough to kind of get her interested. And now she's just like, oh my gosh, I've heard all this guy's jokes. I'm done with your jokes. Right. I'm never gonna laugh. Today, if I can get her to laugh, the other day I told the joke, she actually laughed, and I was like, oh my gosh, that must have been a dang good joke, because after all these years we've been married, she finally laughed at something again. I was like, okay, I still got some game a little bit.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, comedy's really not my thing, but
yeah.
But
what were some? Let me ask you. So, just what was maybe a lesson or two that you've learned as a child that you maybe kind of help incorporate what you do today, as not only just as a father, but even being a producer and a filmmaker?
That's a good question. Well, as a child, I'm gonna have to think about this one. That's a really deep question.
Yeah.
I don't think I was very. I wasn't learning a lot of stuff as a kid, to be honest. Let me tell you, I come from a family that was pretty academic. My mom was a teacher. My older brother was very, he's 4.0 student all through Brighton, honor roll. He went to BYU, got a PhD in chemical engineering, was a valedictorian, Sterling Scholar, all that kind of academic stuff. And some of my siblings are like that as well. And in fact, when I was my older brother, when he was in elementary school, my parents said, this kid's really smart. Let's skip him up a grade. So they moved him up a grade.
Oh, really?
And then when I came along, they said, well, David's probably smart too. Let's test him out and see if he can skip grades. So when I was in second grade, they tested me out. and me and another kid in my neighborhood, Craig Perry, who also went to Brighton.
Oh, yeah, no, Craig.
Craig, we tested out, and they said, I guess they're smart enough. Let's skip those kids up. So Craig really was smart. I don't know how I passed the test, but Craig went on. He was also a Sterling Scholar, 4.0 Honor Society, went to Harvard, got a law degree. He's a super smart guy. And then there's me. I was like, how did I get thrown in this group of smart people? Because I'm definitely not in that group of smart people. So
Right.
somehow coming back to the original question, I didn't really learn that much as a kid because I kind of like once I got into high school, I wasn't really studying much.
Yeah.
I wasn't pursuing that academic side of things. It wasn't really till after I had, so I graduated from high school when I was 16 because I was, they skipped me up one grade. And plus I had a September birthday, so it was right on the border of when
I
a
never
kid
knew
starts.
that.
So all through high school, I was, ever since third grade, I was 2 years behind everybody in my class. So I kind of didn't really fit in because of that.
Okay.
And so it was a little bit of a struggle getting through high school and really feeling like I can excel as a student against kids who are 2 years older than me and way smarter than me. So I didn't really, but it wasn't until I graduated from high school, went to the U for 2 years, then I went on a mission and came back, and then I really started kind of finding my groove and figuring out how to, after the mission, you learn a lot of stuff when you go on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I learned a lot, grew a little bit, and that's when I really kind of figured out, hey, I can study and I can get an A in college and
Right.
I can learn things. And so that's kind of when I felt like
Yeah.
I was kind of coming into my own after at that point.
No, that's awesome. So obviously, you're very passionate about what you do for a living, when did that happen? Like, did you know as a young kid that you had this, maybe a desire to be in film or producing film, or where did that come from and when did it start?
A lot of people I know who were in the film industry had that passion when they were young. They knew when they were a kid they wanted to
Right.
make movies. They would play with cameras. That wasn't me. I had no idea I was going to end up anywhere near the film industry. The closest memory I have that is somewhat close to TV or film was when I was 8 years old. There was this old show back in Utah, the local TV station called Hotel Balderdash.
Yeah.
And it was it was like Channel 4. They had it was like a kids show. It was on from 6 in the morning till 8 in the morning. And they played cartoons, but they had these two guys that were the hosts of it. They just did it in the studio in a warehouse out in west side of Salt Lake. And they were the hosts of this show, and they were goofy. There was Harvey and Cannonball were the two hosts.
Harvey and Cannonball.
And
I can't
Harvey,
believe you remember that.
one of the, well, I just remember. I don't know why I remember it, but our Cub Scout group went down there, and we were on that TV show.
Okay.
And every group that came on the show, they would have a competition, and if you won the competition, it was like you'd pick a door, and if you picked the right door with a number, then you'd win the prize. And I picked the right door, and I won the prize. I won the Harvey bag, is what they called it. It was a bag full of crappy gifts, but I was so happy that I won. I was 8 years old, and I'd been on a TV show, and I won it, and then they aired it the next day, and then I was kind of famous for about a day with my 8-year-old friends from being on a TV show. And so that was my first taste of it, but it wasn't until college when I really started thinking about it, because when I was in high school and college, I was thinking, what am I going to do for my career? I have no idea. My dad's in marketing, and maybe I do business. I don't know. What does that mean? Accounting? So I took some accounting classes and business classes, and then I was at the U taking some math and economics and some, not trigonometry. What's the statistics? It was a statistics class.
Yeah.
I remember
one.
taking statistics and being so miserable, thinking, if I have to do numbers and figuring out the median and the mean, if I have to do this all day, I don't know how. I was already like 2 years into college, and I was like, I can't do business. I can't do this. I've got to do something else. And I thought, well, what do I like? And all I could think of was sports.
Yeah.
I like watching sports. I like talking about sports. That's all. That's what I want to do. And so I just switched and I thought, well, what job does that? And well, sportscaster. I'll be the guy on the news talking about sports. So So I switched my career to that, or my major at the U to that, to broadcast journalism, and I started taking courses in that. And so I got a degree in broadcast journalism from the U, thinking I was going to be the next sports guy on ESPN. And that's where I kind of got as part of that program, you go out and you interview people, you film stuff, you do interviews, you're the host, you're dealing with TV news stories, and and you get cameras and you go film things and you edit it together and as part of the show. And so that's what we did at the U. And so I dabbled in that a little bit, and that's kind of where my first interest got. And then right after I graduated from college, I was hoping to get hired by ESPN immediately and be their main guy on SportsCenter, but that didn't happen.
Right.
And we had just done an internship for a company, making a video as part of an internship, and I was still trying to figure out where I was going to go with this and how I was going to make a career. And then my wife's uncle was asking me at this time, "What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out. I just made a video for a guy." He said, "Well, you made a video. Do you think you could make a video for my company?" And so that little question by my uncle got me thinking, well, yeah, I could. I just made one, so I'm an expert at making videos.
Yeah, I can do it.
So yeah, I could do it. So I told my wife, I'm going to start a company making videos for companies. And she's like, what? And so she thought I was a little crazy, but she was supportive. And so I started a little production company and just myself renting equipment. And, it was a struggle for the first few years, but we got to the point after 3 years where I could quit my part-time job. She could quit all of her other jobs, and we were kind of living off of it. So that's kind of the gist of how I got into.
All from a question, can you do a video for me?
Yeah, and I said,
that's cool.
Yeah, and I didn't really know how, but I believed that I could do it.
Yeah. And how many years now has that been?
It's been over 25 years. It was right after graduating from college,
That's
so
amazing.
It's been over 25 years. We're still plugging along, we're still in business.
Amazing. Well, there's probably, you've done so many like commercials and documentaries and movies and all these, business videos and training videos. I'm sure people listening to this have probably seen your work, just didn't realize maybe it came from you, but you've even done a video for me, which has been the lemonade stand, which was fantastic. I still get people constantly telling me, "Oh, I saw that lemonade. That was the coolest video, and love your story." But man, that was so well done, man. I watch it from time to time, and that was several years ago. And man, you really do excellent work, and you can tell you love what you do.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I still have a special place in my heart for kids at lemonade stands now because of you. So every time I see a lemonade stand, I try to pull over and give them all the money I have in my ashtray of my car.
That's awesome.
I do, and I tell my kids that, and my kids are always like, "Oh my gosh, we have to pull over again, Dad." So yeah, it's been great.
It is a pretty cool thing. I did it just the other day as I was coming home from here. There was these kids right by my house on the street corner selling candy bars and stuff, and I gave them all that I had, and they were just freaking out. And I'm like, man, this is the coolest thing, just how that can just change your whole perspective on life and stuff.
Yeah.
But
the funniest one was a kid in my neighborhood who I pulled over. They had a sign. It looked like they were selling something, so a lemonade stand. I pulled over, and I was like, wait a second, where's the lemonade? And then they were holding up a sign, and it said dancing show.
Are you serious?
Was like, okay, and I had to ask them, okay, I'm going to give you some money, but what exactly, you don't have any cookies or brownies or lemonade? And they're like, no, we're doing a dancing show. And so these are like 8-year-old kids. It was a boy and his sister, and they're on my street. And then I said, okay, well, let's see what you got. And they had a boombox, they played some music, and they did a little dance for about a minute, and I was like, awesome. Yeah.
Dude,
I was thirsty. Cool. I wanted some lemonade, but it was great. The kids are they're entrepreneurs, and
they really are.
More power to them. So.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you for sharing some background on you. I really do want to get into this amazing project that you've done with Dog Valley. Why don't we just kind of start with you mentioned what it was about a little bit in the beginning. If you want to add more to that now. But also, why did you want to do this? Like, why did you take this project on? And let's kind of start from there.
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people have asked me that. Throughout the course of our business at Avalanche Studios, we do projects for hire. People hire us, they give us money, and we do the projects. And so we don't ultimately have total control over all the projects because someone's paying us to do other projects. Mm-hmm. And so we always like to have a passion project on the side that we do have control over. So over the years, we've done a few documentaries that we have initiated and done because we're interested in doing that subject. Like one of them is Alex Boyer's story. We did his kind of life story, and we initiated that one and self-financed that and did that. And there's some others too, but so we had finished his story and some other smaller ones, and then we didn't really have a passion project to do. And we were approached by Chad Anderson, who's one of the producers of this show and who appears in the show. And Chad came to us, and he had been referred to us by some other people in the industry. So Chad Anderson is the key driving force behind this documentary. He's the one who found out about the crime. He had been researching gay hate crimes in the state of Utah. He found out about it, and then he was like, "Oh my gosh, this!" And as he got more into the story, he was like, "This is crazy. What has happened in this story?"
Yeah.
And he knew it could. He wanted to write a book about it. That was his original plan.
Okay.
And so he had all this research and had all this documentation, and he'd already interviewed a bunch of people for his book. And then he started thinking about, well, maybe it's a documentary. And so he was referred to us. So we'd never met him. He walks into our studio and is like, "I got a documentary. You want to talk about it?" And so he told us the story, and we were fascinated with the story because I had vaguely heard of Michael Archuleta, one of the killers involved in this, but I didn't know much about the story. I kind of remember hearing about it, but it happened back when I wasn't really paying attention to news. In 1988, I was just got back from a mission and looking for a wife and stuff. I wasn't worried too much about the news, so I didn't really follow it.
Yeah.
But other people in the, a lot of gay men in Salt Lake City at that time were following it very, very closely to find out what was going to happen with this crime, because it was such a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Such a horrible hate crime. So Chad brings it to us and tells us, "I've got this story," and we're just blown away with the details of how crazy this is. And he goes, "Oh, and by the way, I've got all this documentation, and I've found all the people involved, and I've got all the court records from Millard County Sheriff's Department, and we've got access to this and access to that." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you've already done all the pre-production for this film."
Yeah.
And he was just so passionate about it. I was like, there's no way we could turn him down. And so we agreed to take it on, and I said, "You know what? We don't have funding for this. It costs a lot of money to make a full-on feature-length documentary. There's a lot of things involved that you don't realize." So we decided to take it on. So we jumped in full bore with Chad.
Wow, that's awesome. You're right. That's no easy task to put together. I mean, it's an hour and a half. I think a little over an hour and a half long. Again, like I said in the beginning, very well done, very well thought out. Like, what I loved is it just walks you through the story as you watch this, and it really just paints the whole picture. At times you feel sick. At times you want to cry. And then there's times where there's these, these moments where you just go, whoa, like you mentioned in the beginning, there's these twists and turns that you didn't expect. And I want to get into some of those. And so why don't we talk about, as you're doing this and you're learning about it too, because you probably had to study it quite a bit, tell us some of these things that, you initially were starting to realize what was going on here with the documentary and, the people involved.
Are you talking about the crime itself?
Yeah. The crime itself. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the crime itself is pretty, it's pretty gruesome what happened, and so we had to be real careful because we did have full access to a lot of crime scene photos and autopsy photos and some hardcore stuff that we had to look at to kind of sort through, so it was pretty tough. But basically the gist of the crime, we'll just kind of walk through just a quick overview of what started this whole thing. So there was a young man named Gordon Church from Delta, Utah. He was going to college at Southern Utah University. At the time, I think it was called Southern Utah State College, SUSC, down in Cedar City. He was living with his grandma in a house down there, renting a room. And he was about 20, I think he was around 28 years old at the time. And so he's a theater major at Southern Utah State College. And a couple of days before Thanksgiving, he was going to go meet some friends. And he goes to the 7-Eleven to buy a pack of cigarettes and get a drink, and then he meets a couple of guys who were hanging out there. And the people that he met were Lance Wood and Michael Archuleta, who are both from Utah, but they had both been recently in prison, and they were, I don't know if they were cellmates, but they knew each other in jail, and they had just gotten out at about the same time. And so they had just been released, and they had just barely been out of prison for about a month, and they were both living in Cedar City. And I think they were trying to figure out how they were going to get by, and I don't think they had jobs, they don't have any money. So I think they were looking for someone to rob, I think is the original. Is possibly one of the things you'll have to watch the film to find out more details. But
yeah. So
they end up engaging, talking to Gordon. They convince Gordon to let them get in his car and go for a ride. and things just went bad after that. That was kind of the beginning. They ended up going up the canyon there near Cedar City called, I think, Cedar Canyon, I believe. And that's where the first attack on him happened. They found out he was gay and attacked him once there. Then they did some more things to him, and then they stuffed him in the trunk of his own car and drove up north. They were going to try to go up to, I don't know what they were thinking, but they were thinking they might go up to the Salt Lake City area and do something, but then they ended up pulling over at the Dog Valley exit, which is just south of Fillmore, and that's where they kind of finished him off, and that's where the bulk of the horrible things happened. So,
wow. So, as you're going through this story, I mean, how did it affect you as you're learning about this? And you even mentioned you had to see some of these pictures that were really heavy to see, and how was it affecting you not only just as a producer but as a human being?
Yeah, it was hard. Looking at the crime scene photos was tough. The autopsy photos were horrible. Those were just like quickly scanned through. I'm like, okay, I've seen that. We're never going to show that to anyone. Those are almost sacred. You don't want to there, and so we've kind of eliminated those from any possibility of showing. But it's hard when you have to kind of look at it like when you're looking at crime scene photos of a body, you kind of have to just look at it like that's a prop. If you look at it like that's real, it's hard to absorb. So you kind of have to like change your mindset for a second to say that could have been my son or that could have been my brother or somebody. It's rough dealing with any kind of a murder. The gruesome realities of what happened is painful.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, there was some really kind of fascinating things that also kind of came about all this. Will you kind of share some of those things with us and some of these big events and things that you learned as you produced this documentary?
Well, one of the cool things that happened was we tried to get both, all sides of the story to at least let everyone be represented in this film. We reached out to the church family. They had no interest in being part of it. I think it was really, really hard for them. Yeah. First of all, knowing that their son was gay. They're a strong LDS family in Delta, Utah, small town rural community. And for the parents, just trying to figure out how to deal with having a son come out as gay is hard enough. And then to find out that he was murdered because of that, it was really hard for them dealing with this and processing it. And so the family has just kind of chosen to not have to dig it all up again and talk about it, which we totally understand, and we respect that and have given them their privacy as far as not trying to make them trying to force them into participating in this story. But so I lost my train of thought. Where are we going?
Well, again, just like some of these
I know what I was going to talk about. Yeah. So the church family declined to participate. The Archuleta family, they are this is Michael Archuleta, who's one of the people who committed the crime. Michael Archuleta had a rough life. He's one of the perpetrators, probably the primary perpetrator of the crime. His family have denied all media requests for anything ever since this crime began. They never wanted to be interviewed. They never wanted to be on camera. They were never on the news. Even though they're the courthouse, all media requests, nothing. We're not talking about this.
Yeah.
But our producers reached out to the Archuleta family, and Chad had tracked them down and just said, "Hey, we're doing this project. Would you like to share your side of the story?" And even though Michael Archuleta is in prison on death row and Draper at the prison there, he legally can't talk to the media. So even if he wanted to, he can't.
Right. Yeah.
So there was no chance of us getting him on camera. But his family, they said no too. And we've been working on this for 3 years. So the first couple of years we were working on this project, there was no discussion with the Archuleta family. Finally, they softened and they decided, you know what, maybe we will talk to you guys. And so they allowed an interview. We went down to their home in Salem, Utah, where they're from. Yeah. And we interviewed Michael Archuleta's sister, Peggy, who was just a dear soul, and then Michael Archuleta's mother, Stella. And we talked to them, and they were just so open. And they're great people, very, very wonderful people. And they've done the best they can. They adopted Michael, and they did the best they could with him, with the challenges that he faced from being in foster care several times and being adopted and bounced around. But I think they took him in and they loved him and did everything they could to provide a good home for him. And they were so gracious and so wonderful. And I think that's one of the best moments that for me made this film the most meaningful, is the comments and the stories and the love and the reaction that we got from the Archuleta family, the family of the killer, which surprised me. It was unexpected. We didn't know where that this was going to happen, but it was so great that they were willing to talk to us and be a key part of our documentary.
Yeah, I'm sure that kind of surprises me too when you say that they were, like you said, they had shut off all media up to this point and wouldn't talk to anyone, and here they are talking to you guys.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And I guess I'll give a little spoiler, but Stella. So we interviewed Stella, who's like in her 80s.
Yeah,
and she was, very sharp and alert and great and seemed healthy. And we did the interview with her and Peggy, and then 2 months after we did the interview, she passed away. And so we felt like, man, we really snuck into her.
Yeah, right.
And it was just so great that she was able to. I think it was great for her also to talk about it and to share things that she's never shared with the media before, and kind of get her side of the story and their family's side of the story out. I don't know. I just felt like that was a great thing for the documentary.
And I'm glad you bring that up too, because I think, in my world, when people can talk about something as heavy as that is, it's therapeutic and it feels good. And like you said, her able to get some of these things off her chest and to share at least her perspective on it. I'm sure that was so helpful for her and, for the family to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's what they felt. But I know I felt that way, at least from our experience of working with them.
So, what is like the whole purpose of this? When someone, who hasn't watched this yet, and when it finally gets released, and we'll talk about the release date and all that, like, what do you want people to walk away from? So what's your goal? Like, if someone watches this, like in your mind as the producer and the filmmaker, what do you want people to walk away with? Like, what's maybe the end goal? Maybe you don't have one. I don't know. I was just wondering if you ever think of it in that way. Like, what do you want people to walk away with this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because initially when we took the project on, it was purely because the project sounded so interesting, and I love true crime documentaries to begin with. So
me too.
I love hearing the details of why somebody did something, especially when it's a murder and something crazy crime. It's like, what would drive them to do that? Why? How could a human being get to the point where they could do something, commit a crime against another person? And what is it? How can we as a society help prevent that? What's going on in someone's head to the point where they're willing to do something to another person to end their life, and how can we stop that? And so that's what has always gotten me about true crime kind of documentary things, and TV shows. It's such a different world that I can't understand, and I kind of want to understand it to know how we can prevent it. And so that's kind of why I agreed to take it on, because I thought this is an interesting subject. This is an interesting thing to me. There's a lot of topics here that people are interested in. It's not just the true crime about the murder, but there's a lot of other issues that people debate and talk about. Things like hate crimes. What is a hate crime? And do we need hate crime legislation?
Yeah.
Do we need to add on extra penalties for people for doing a hate crime versus just a regular crime? That's a big debate among some people. And then there's things like capital punishment and the death penalty, and even issues like adoption. How does that affect people? There's a lot of things that have come up in this film that we've touched on and that are kind of discussed a little bit, that are get your brain thinking about stuff. And that's kind of what documentaries are for. You have a story, you present things, and then you hear an experience of what happened to people, and then you watch the show, and then you talk about it, and then you debate and you learn, and hopefully everyone is edified by this. So hopefully when people watch Dog Valley, it's going to take you on a journey of, you kind of start out here at a midpoint, and then it takes you down on this deep plunge into horrible details of a brutal hate crime. And then I hope that it pulls people back up at the end with the reaction of his loved ones, his friends who knew him, so that we can honor Gordon Church for his life, and then also even learning about his family and the love that his family showed. Well, Gordon's family, but also Michael Archuleta's family. They showed a lot of love to he's their son and their brother is a murderer, but they never gave up on him. They still visit him and call him, and they have unconditional love for their son, even though he did a horrible thing. And so there are some messages of hope in there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, those are the things we want people to take away from this.
Wow. I love that, Dave. I think, we wouldn't wish this on anyone. Obviously, it was a horrible, horrible thing. But even through a horrible thing, some good things can come of it. And I think that's what you're ultimately saying. And I think, towards the end, you do feel that way towards the end of the documentary, where it does bring it back a little bit. And you maybe see the killers even in a different light. Not that there's no justification for it, but it does make you look at it a little differently, but maybe with a little more compassion on some level. Would you agree with that? That there's partly that happening?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we in addition to interviewing Michael Archuleta and his family, and you definitely get a lot of compassion for Michael Archuleta. You watch this documentary and your heart goes out to him. The killer, your heart goes out to the killer, which is surprising. I didn't think I could feel that. This guy brutally murdered somebody. My old brain would have thought, we gotta, give him the electric chair and let's have no compassion towards him at all. But you have compassion towards a person, because of what his mother and his sister. When you hear how they talk about it, you can't help but have some compassion for him and his situation when you learn about how he grew up. And I'm not making any excuse for the way someone grew up, what kind of hard things you had. That doesn't give you license to go do something, go murder somebody. You never have that, but you at least get some understanding. And then with Lance Wood, he's the other person involved in this crime. We actually were able to interview him because he's not on death row. He didn't get a death sentence. He's on what is it? He got a life sentence basically. And so he was in a situation where he was willing to talk and he was willing to be interviewed on camera, and we did get his perspective of things. And you develop a different attitude towards him because he talked a lot, and the more he talked, the more you realize, I don't like this guy. And he becomes a main character in the documentary.
For sure.
And some crazy stuff happens in his life later in the documentary. You find out some things that he's been doing while he's in jail, and we'll let you watch the documentary to find out what happens to him. And that was kind of surprising to me when I saw and heard those things. I was like, whoa. So and I'm telling you folks, I really mean this, and I'm not just saying this. It is really worth the watch. Dog Valley, it's very well done, and it really does share a powerful story. And boy, I'm telling you, it messes with your emotions a little bit. You're back and forth and this and that, but I like that because I think that's what true crime, documentaries do, is they take you through this kind of a roller coaster ride of how this all went down. I have a question. How do you think this is going to, when this comes out, going to affect the LGBTQ community, and what do you think the response might be, and and maybe your thoughts on what you would tell them? That's a good question. Well, we didn't seek, when we started this project, I wasn't thinking, this is an LGBTQ-themed movie. I mean, it was just like one element of it was that Gordon was gay. I mean, obviously it's an important element, but as we got into it, we realized, this is a pretty heavy theme in this. And Chad Anderson, who I mentioned, is one of the producers. He's gay. He came out several years ago and moved to Utah and is raising his two boys here. And so he's heavily involved in the LGBTQ issues, and is, I don't know if he's really, you call him an activist or whatever, but he writes, and he's involved in a lot of LGBTQ issues, I guess you'd say. So there's definitely a community of people who are going to be interested in this film, and as we've screened it to groups that are heavily gay or lesbian or whatever, LGBTQ groups of people, they've often thanked us and been brought to tears, and it's a tough show to watch for anybody, but especially someone in that community is also, it's hard to watch. In fact, our main actor who portrayed Gordon in the recreations, Joey Branca, he is, he's gay and he's from Utah. Grew up in a very similar situation that Gordon grew up in. Came from an LDS family in a small Utah town, and he's kind of living it. And it was really hard for him to film some of those scenes. Very emotional to kind of put yourself in the situation of someone that is, supposedly a different character, but it's also not far from his personal life situation at the time anyway.
Wow.
So it was very tough filming, especially
Sure.
and the interesting thing about where we filmed those recreations is we didn't go find a place that looked kind of like the area where it happened. We actually went to the locations where these crimes happened. And so we were filming right at the site, and you could feel the eeriness while we're filming. And so we went to Dog Valley and we went to Cedar Canyon, and literally within feet of where this may have happened. And so,
well, you can feel it when you watch it at the same time. So you really, that does come across when you're watching it. You feel that.
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, and I love that you're reaching out to that community, because again, obviously it's going to affect them maybe a little differently than the people who aren't maybe lesbian or gay, but I know that's not originally why you even took it on. It's just like, hey, here's a story. But I think it's good too to even though Gordon Church had to go through something so horrific, this tragedy can do a lot of good. And it's you mentioned how it kind of helps shape maybe some of legislation in Utah. Can you talk a little bit about that, or maybe some things that have come from that's helped it?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, there was a new SB 103, a state bill or Senate bill 103. It was some hate crimes legislation that was passed in Utah, which was basically a stronger version of some earlier attempts at hate crimes legislation in Utah, or I guess there was kind of some earlier versions that were, what do you call it, proposed. I'm not a legal person, I don't know the words, but when you present a bill and you discuss it and vote it, I'm not sure what that term is, but they tried in the past, but nothing really stuck that was of any major effect. But in 2018, they did finally, in the state of Utah, did pass some heavier hate crimes legislation. So back in 1988, when this happened, there was no real effective hate crimes legislation to apply towards this.
Right.
And so they just kind of went through the regular laws at the time. But since that time, Utah has discussed it, debated it, and they have agreed to, update their hate crimes legislation to where now it's a pretty decent. Most people are happy with this SB 103.
Where it's at, yeah. Well, again, out of tragedy, some good can happen. And again, this documentary already, on some level, even though Gordon had to go through something horrific, I really do think a lot of good's going to come of this. And I think it's just impressive, Dave, that you were willing to take this project on. And again, how well it is done. And you can obviously tell you put a lot of you do this with everything you do with your work, but your heart and passion's definitely, you can feel that coming through, when you watch it.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, so why don't we talk about when's it going to be released, and when it is released, how can people find it? What's the best way to do this? And, and that way we can maybe direct people to where to go.
Sure. So the broad release date is October 1st, when it'll be available on like Apple TV and iTunes and most video on demand things. If you've got, Dish Network or Comcast or whatever your cable provider is, most of them have some kind of streaming or video on demand. So it'll be on Amazon as well.
Okay.
So yeah, if you just Google or search for Dog Valley, you should be able to find it.
And so so on October 1st, are you doing any type of, promotions at that time that maybe people can be a part of? Are you guys doing any kind of, I don't know, you wouldn't call it like a party or anything, but what I'm talking about, like a screening where people can come and kind of a grand opening, I guess.
Yeah, I wish we were. I know originally when we, Gravitas Ventures is our distribution company. They're based out of Cleveland, and they're distributing the film. And originally we had talked about having a theatrical release. We have, but right now I think they've scaled that back because COVID is one issue, and so they're hesitant about doing that. Originally when we were talking to them, it was, several months ago when COVID was even, back when COVID was more of a thing. And so so we're not doing a traditional theatrical release at the moment.
Okay.
They're just kind of going right to streaming and on demand kind of a release at the moment. We really wish we could have done that. We had big plans for that, but I just don't think it's in the cards this fall like we're hoping.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense, and I understand that. But I'm glad we're doing this interview with you, Dave, and what you're doing. And we'll try to get the word out as to many people as we can. And again, like I said, I mean, I'm telling you, it is worth the watch because it really does take you through, this whole thing in a way that it captivates you. It's hard to watch it sometimes, not because it's not good, but just more of the emotional part of it.
Yeah.
And so is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap this up, like about, what you're doing and about Dog Valley or any other things that you might be working on that you'd like to share?
I'd just like to say, first of all, thanks for letting me come on and talk to me.
Absolutely.
Let me talk to you about this documentary. We think it's an important film that can benefit a lot of people and help a lot of different groups by watching it. And so thanks for letting us come on and talk about that. And I also just want to thank you and congratulate you on everything you're doing with your podcast. I think it's amazing that you're getting up to such a viewership, and I appreciate all the work you do ever since Sly Dog, back in the day, all your anti-drug stuff you've been doing over the years is such a valuable thing. And I just really respect you for helping so many people in not just with addiction, but any kind of mental health issues, all the guidance and coaching and advice and mentorship. I mean, I just really appreciate everything you do, and I'm really proud of you.
Oh,
I feel like I'm your dad. I should.
Well, that means a lot coming from you, Dave.
You've done a good job, son. So keep up the great work.
No, that means a lot coming from you, Dave, and the feeling's mutual. I love how you carry yourself and the way you raise your family. Your family's amazing, and you're amazing, and just grateful to rub shoulders with you. And I'm grateful that every now and then I get to, come and audition for a commercial. I don't usually make it, but I get a shot every now and then. Right. But I do appreciate that.
That's right.
But I'm going to ask you another question here, as we wrap this up. If there's someone listening to you right now, Dave, and that might be just struggling, they're in a dark place, or they're just having a rough time, what's some advice that you may be able to give them right now?
Well, advice, I'm sitting here in your studio and there's advice all over the place. I'm looking at pictures that say mindset is everything, and the most delightful surprise in life is to suddenly recognize there is nothing wrong with you and just be it. I'm looking at all your slogans and the sayings that I've heard you say, and the positive messages and positive vibes you give out in life. And I just really believe everything you're saying in your work. And I would just kind of echo some of that. And as it relates to Dog Valley and the stuff that I've been doing, I think, just the name of your podcast, Belief Cast, you got to believe in yourself and believe in God, believe in other people, believe that things are going to get better. And this, just like this film, like I was talking earlier, it starts out on a downward trend.
Yeah.
Okay. You feel like you're going into a dark hole when you start watching this film because you're learning about some crazy bad stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But you got to know that it turns around and things get better at the end, where you feel unconditional love from the people involved. And that's how life is. Sometimes you start out and sometimes you feel like you're going into a black hole, but it doesn't last forever. And you have to believe that it's going to get better and keep fighting through, and it will get better. And I guess that's kind of the advice I would give people who are struggling with something is, if you have positive thoughts and you believe, and whether you believe in God or not, but if you believe in yourself, believe things are going to get better. Things are going to get better, and they usually do. I found that in my own life. I've had not major struggles. We have had a handful here and there, but I've had a few dark days. But generally, things turn around, and life gets better, and life's great right now. I'm really, really happy to be here.
Love it, man. Very well said. Seriously, I echo those words. So thank you, and that's fantastic. Thank you for taking the time. This was cool. It was good to sit down with you and get to know a little bit about your childhood, and then obviously this big project you're doing. And I hope people will tune in. And if people want to reach out to you, and find out more about Avalanche Studios and maybe, ask you a question, or what would be the best way for someone to do that?
Yeah, you can go to our website, avalanchestudios.com. It's avalanche-studios.com, and you can track us down there. Or if you want to learn more about Dog Valley, you can go to the website for that, which is dogvalleymovie.com.
Okay.
Also go on Facebook. You can find the Facebook page, which has current information. We better update it so it is current. but yeah, if you could find Dog Valley on Facebook at Dog Valley, I don't know, Facebook.Dog Valley, whatever it is. Just Google it, and maybe you can find it.
Yeah, it'll be there.
Cool. But yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to talk to us. We have a lot of people who find us or have heard about the film, and they email us or call us and say, hey, I heard about this movie. How can we find it? And we've had to always tell them, we've got to wait for a little bit, but now we're finally able to let them know that it's being released and they can find it and watch it.
It's exciting, man. Again, thank you for taking on that project and honoring Gordon Church's life and bringing awareness around all this. I think it's only good's going to come of this. So I'm so glad you did that. And again, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah,
this
thanks.
has been awesome.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Go Bengals.
Go Bengals, yeah. Pride and Bengals, baby. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I told you this was going to be great. Please check out Dog Valley. October 1st is the release date. It'll be on all the video streaming outlets. Please check it out. And also reach out to Dave if you have a question or if you want to know more about what he does at Avalanche Studios. And, if you might need some of his services, please check him out and reach out to him. He's a great guy, and he can help you out for sure. And again, thanks to our sponsors. I love you guys. And again, everyone that just listen to this, please share this with other people. Share this with anyone that you may know that would be interested in this. And love you guys. And until next time, thanks again, Dave.
See ya.